Please welcome your host, John Coleman.
So today we're talking about meetings with Agile. If you use Scrum, there are 4 formal, inspect, and adapt events. If you use Kanban, there's really no formalized events. A lot of good teams would be using some kind of daily review of what's going on. One of the reasons why I want to talk about this today is I had a chat with somebody about what do we do with all these agile meetings? Because since we put in this agile model, so we don't have any time to get any work done. And the context here is somebody working in Ireland for an American company. So they do their work in the morning in Ireland because there's 5-hour time difference to East Coast US. And then once the Americans start, it's like meeting mania for the afternoon. So basically, they can't get any work done for the Irish afternoon. And I was curious about that because in Scrum, for example, the daily Scrum is an event to avoid other meetings. Similarly, in Kanban, if you did have a daily review of flow and we're looking at what was going on, the intent of the meeting is for people who are doing the work to collaborate, cooperate, tricky things that they're trying to solve today, things that they're trying to finish, things that they're trying to progress. It's not a session for talking about the blind, obvious stuff where we know what we need to do. We can just follow a recipe and we can work on our own. We can just do it. Really, this is why I'm not a fan of person by person updates at daily meetings. The 3 questions were in the Scrum guide until the 2020 version, which came out at the end of last year. And I was relieved that those 3 questions were removed, even though they were only in there as a kind of a suggestion, became the thing that everybody does. Just what did I do yesterday? What am I doing today? Do I have any impediments? And the problem with those 3 questions is that there's a few problems. One of the problems is that I feel like I have to give an update. I feel like I might need to look busy or whatever. And another problem is that maybe some of the things that I'm doing really are of no interest to anybody. So why would anybody really want to know about that kind of stuff? So it becomes really boring. And if I'm honest, when I give updates myself, I found myself getting my energy ready for my update and then I switch off after my update was done. So I wasn't really in the frame of mind of what can I do to help my colleagues. And the third problem is it becomes a I'm all right, Jack type update and just see who's going to get it in the neck today. It's very problematic when you've got visitors. Visitors are supposed to be quiet. I've never seen a visitor actually be quiet. I remember I did a training course one day and someone was giving me a lot of hassle that they wanted to see something real. Of course, in hindsight, this person was never going to be convinced. I don't try to convince people. This person was never going to be satisfied and was wasting my energy. And I brought him to Teams Daily. I said, can you just observe and don't interfere? Just let them carry on. And he interfered. And the meeting took twice as long. And often, by the way, even though I'm only an agility coach, when I turn up at daily meetings, the meeting changes, the event changes. The people behave differently when I turn up, which I was quite surprised about. I like using a tool called Kanbanize. They might use Kanbanize when I turn up, or when I don't turn up, they mightn't bother. So it's interesting. So what you really want is a dynamic where people are collaborating on what to do next, and they're trying to avoid other meetings. It does not mean that you should not be communicating with each other during the day. Of course, you should be communicating with each other during the day. That goes without saying. You don't wait for the following day to give another update. If you can talk immediately, that's fine. But it's like the minimum cadence where we're checking what's going on. And it's particularly relevant for Scrum because with Scrum, there's a product goal, which is like the direction of travel, where are we going? And the sprint goal is a direction of travel, where are we going for the sprint, which is iterating towards the product goal. So having a daily checkpoint against that sprint goal, which is iterating towards the product goal, keeps our eye on the prize a little bit and stops us going off like a drunk man walking down a dark alley. So keeping us going in one direction. And so that's what it's about. It's not when you have leaders turning up, when you have visitors turning up, it just ruins it. It's not a daily meeting. You might as well just call it a status meeting when you do it that way. So if you're going to have those things, just have some kind of status meeting and be honest about it. It's not very exciting because really the daily is a planning meeting. What are we to do today? How are we going to collaborate? How are we going to unblock those items? How are we going to fix these problems? How are we going to make progress with these people in the other teams and so on? One exception I'd say is we might, for collaborating with other teams, we might visit their daily because we're working together. It's not because anyone there has to show off to us that they're so busy and they're so wonderful. It's more about how do we solve problems together. So the daily is daily Scrum and Scrum, whatever you want in Kanban, daily flow maybe. It's about collaborating what we're going to do next. It is not a status update. It is not for showing how busy we are, but this is what a lot of people do. They've been quite disappointed with stories from really fake product owners is all I can say. They're trying to keep people busier in the teams and then complaining to their managers that they're not taking it for the team and they're not taking on extra stuff, even though in sprint planning they already decided how much work they could do in the sprint and they'd made allowances for all the usual kind of noise that they would get, but even above, they wanted them to go above and beyond. So you get a case where if you're a person in Ireland doing their work, the only time to get work done is the morning. Then they got meeting mania for the afternoon. They're expected to do the work in the evening then, in the American afternoon, but Irish evening when actually people are supposed to be resting and because they're supposed to work at a sustainable pace when we're using agility. So I see a lot of people abusing that daily, people with the wrong mindset turning up, pushing work into teams, behaving really badly, treating estimates as commitments and guarantees, and doing all the kind of wrong things, basically. So managers, project managers, leaders, keep away from the daily, please. Even product owners, keep away from the daily meetings. Nothing's context free. I've seen some brilliant product owners being at the daily Scrum and it worked really well, but I've seen lots of really bad things happening as well. So I'd err on the side of it's for the people on the team doing the work, collaborating what they're going to do next. If somebody wants an update, they can have another update somewhere else, but it's not really designed for that. Okay, so that's the daily meeting. I touched on sprint planning a while ago in Scrum. So in sprint planning, that's a meeting for deciding what we're going to do in the next sprint. In another episode, I talked about how long your sprint should be. I'm not going to go into that now. But let's say you have a 3-week sprint for your team because that's how long it takes you to deliver a done increment. Then you're planning work for the next 3 weeks. And if you're sensible and you know that there's always noise, you might want to cut a little bit of fat out and say noise is going to come in. So let's not be stupid about it and fill the whole sprint with new work when we know every sprint there's some support noise that we're just expected to do as part of the rules of this company. So you'd be sensible about that. And I actually prefer teams to underplan, underpromise and overdeliver. I prefer to see them get some things done, get some product items done, and then at a daily meeting or whenever during the sprint, as long as the sprint goal is not at risk, the team is free to bring in additional product backlog items. That'll be even easier if you're using Scrum with Kanban. Then you'll have all sorts of Kanban metrics. You'll know how long it takes for work to get finished. You'll have an idea of a range and so on. As long as the items aren't elephant size, you'll have some idea. So sprint planning is to provide focus during the sprint and to help us to continue to iterate towards the product goal. Sprint goal is what the team commits to, and it's got 3 topics now. Topic 1 is about trying to figure out the goal for the sprint. You mightn't finalize that though. Topic 1, topic 2, which items help, how are we going to deliver the sprint? And then topic 3 is where you can break it all down. Some people use task breakdown. You don't have to use task breakdown. But at the end of the sprint planning, you basically come up with it, say, this is our sprint goal, this is the forecast, these are the items we're going to deliver them, and it should be focused on that. There should be no stakeholders really at sprint planning, in my opinion. You can get technical experts in, maybe if there's some skills that we're short of in our team that we just don't have in the team. So you need someone to come in and contribute in terms of technical knowledge. Other than that, it's for the Scrum team. With the sprint review, that's really a review of content. So what have we delivered? Are there any new market insights? Do we have any updated forecasts? Great place to review deadlines. But look, maybe a probabilistic forecast if you're using Scrum and Kanban and you're reviewing what's going on there. You're looking at what went well during the sprint and what problems you might have solved as well. It's a bit less prescriptive in the 2020 Scrum Guide. But essentially, you're looking at the increment, the outputs really that are ready to be shipped, or maybe they've been shipped already. We might even have some feedback. We might even be looking at some feedback from the market as well in terms of this is how people are responding. And really good Scrum teams would also be reviewing the results of experiments and maybe customer interviews and stuff like that. The Scrum with UX is a great way of combining discovery and delivery. Really, really nice way of that balance of dual track agile. So sprint review has a purpose for reviewing the what, and then the retrospective is just for the Scrum team for reviewing the how. How do we do our work, and also review in terms of how are we getting on as a team? Can we improve as a team? And all these kinds of things. There's one other session that a lot of Scrum teams use, and that'll be product backlog refinement. It's an activity, it's not a meeting as such, it's not an event. It's an activity. Lots of good teams might say we have 15 minutes for our daily Scrum, so maybe we have a little tea break and come back and we do product backlog refinement for 20 minutes. We break down the bigger product backlog items into smaller ones. We try to get a common understanding of the problem we're trying to solve, try to look at some examples, maybe do some design, break it down, maybe do a little bit of forecasting, try to do a bit of 80-20. Can we get 80% of the outcomes from 20% of the outputs? So that's very useful. But what I find is some teams in particular who don't do planning, they don't do review, they don't do retrospective, they don't do refinement. What tends to happen is they tend to bundle everything into the daily. Then people don't really know what the daily is about anymore. And then the daily isn't really about avoiding other meetings. It's actually about just keeping everybody happy. And if you try to keep everybody happy, nobody's happy. And then you get all these other checkpoints, status updates, all these things. So really, leaders, product owners, trust the Scrum team. You don't need to do alignments during the day. Just let them get the job done. Look at what they've done. You'll have opportunities as stakeholders to look at things before they build them in product backlog refinement and in the sprint review, and also even before the sprint review, as well as the team has work that's ready to be reviewed. You have plenty of time to do that then. Just trust them. Stakeholders need to also exhibit the behaviors that are related to the Scrum values, allowing the team to be focused, and you as a leader allowing them to be focused, being open and having the courage to talk about problems that are going on, and being respectful and allowing the team to be committed to what they've already said they deliver. And not the opposite of a good stakeholder for me is where they're just lumbering extra stuff in all the time and they're using Scrum. So we just get more juice out of these teams. We just throw more stuff in and they'll work all hours. That's really not the spirit of the thing. You completely lost the plot if that's what's going on in your organization. The events are lacking purpose. They've lost their purpose. They've forgotten what they're about. They're doing the things that I would consider as anti-patterns, like the 3 questions of person by person updates at the sprint review, doing boring presentations at the sprint review instead of looking at something and deciding what to do next together. Looking at one small improvement that we can control as a team in the retrospective, and maybe one that we can escalate to senior leaders because not everything's within the control of the team. I see lots of teams with really fancy retrospectives, all sorts of wonderful techniques, but is anything improving? No. So I prefer to see teams improving, continuously improving, and I don't care if it's a McDonald's retrospective, drive-through retrospective. As long as you got one small improvement and it is a real improvement, you can then look back over time to see, look at all the improvements that we made. And you can also look at the escalated improvements as well that we've made. So that's really the way to look at it. So in Scrum, teams, if they're doing these events properly, they will have less meetings. There will be more trust because it's not just the Scrum team that's supposed to exhibit the Scrum values, but also the stakeholders. And we're supposed to be empirical together. So that means we're not going to be giving Gantt charts to stuff that's supposed to be doing a year and a half. We're going to be probably using probabilistic forecasting. And even that's smoke and mirrors sometimes. But I prefer to have regular up-to-date forecasts than guaranteeing you're going to deliver something by a particular date. So if you feel you're in a Scrum team and you feel that you're not getting time to get the work done, maybe it's worth having a chat with the key stakeholders who are turning up at some of your events, who maybe are perhaps destroying your events, not giving you the trust, not allowing you to get the work done. With Kanban, you really only need to have the daily, but even then you don't even have to have that. There should be a daily review of flow. I would get very nervous when people say, oh, we ring each other during the day, it's okay, it's fine. We're not going to wait till tomorrow. I don't expect you to wait till tomorrow. You should do that anyway. But I guess if you're lacking in goals, then you don't have a direction to travel. For me, kind of a basic worry would be the Kanban board is probably going to go to date fairly fast if you're only meeting once a week, even twice a week. And the cycle times that are being clocked up on the system are wrong because something was finished actually 2 days ago. We've only moved it to done today, or we've only got the feedback. We got the feedback 3 days ago, but we've only updated the Kanban board now, and now we're responding to that. So it gets a bit messy when people don't do dailies. But what I will say again, just to repeat this, at a daily meeting, if you do have one, please do not bore your colleagues. You're just following a recipe. You know what to do. Your colleagues don't care what you're doing because it's monotonous, it's tedious, it's simple, it's clear. You're following a recipe. You can do it on your own. It's only the stuff really that where you need to collaborate, the stuff that you need to solve. You want there to be a team spirit. Now, also in Kanban, I would say, even though retrospectives aren't mandated, a really good Kanban team would be doing some kind of retrospective. Same tip I would say to you, just make sure there's one small improvement that we do in the next time period. And if there's something that needs to be escalated, get it escalated. I had a couple of teams a few years ago, and I'm not joking, when I onboarded the teams for me from another coach, both teams, they had an impediment that was 7 years old, 7 years old. So they just thought that this is how crap things are around here. They thought things could be improved. So when I see Scrum Masters and Agile coaches just giving up, and this is just the way it is, what are you doing there? Like, you're supposed to be a change agent. And maybe you haven't got a good Scrum Master. Maybe you haven't got a good Agile coach. Maybe they're part of the problem. I don't. So if you feel that whatever meetings you're having, you feel them adding value, you should absolutely check in to see what is the purpose, what outcomes are we looking for, who's supposed to be there, what are the minimum required things you should be doing, what are the kind of optional things you should be doing. Optional for me at a daily would be 3 questions. I would say avoid that. Absolute required for me would be which items are getting really old, which ones are blocked, zone in on those, what's going on with those. Because if our cycle times start getting unpredictable, then our forecast gets unpredictable and the organization will trust us less. I'm not saying that our work is predictable, but it just gets more predictable when you can have a kind of a tighter range of cycle times. And you have tighter range of cycle times per work item type if you really watch your work item age. So whatever you do, try to watch work item age, whether it's Scrum, Kanban, or whatever type of approach that you're using. That's pretty much it for today. I hope you enjoyed this. If you have any topics that you'd like me to talk about on another session, just direct message me on social media. Thank you very much. Have a good rest of your day.